Welcome to Digging for the Truth with Ark and Neo. This is episode number 4. And in this podcast, we're going to be digging deep into the transhumanism issue and how it connects to the history of the Golem and man creating machines or interfaces that demons can inhabit, much like a walking Ouija board, in either the form of a robot or a willing and open human. We had so much information to discuss in this podcast that we'll actually be breaking this episode up into 2 episodes. So this is just part 1 of 2. I'm pretty sure that all of you listening will want to stay tuned for this fascinating discussion, and we'll also be playing a couple songs as well for your listening pleasure, and we're glad you tuned in. We'd love to hear from you and what you think about our podcast so far. If you have any comments or questions, you can get in touch with us at destinylab@gmail.com or through our website at destinylab.com. At some point, we probably will have a Digging for the Truth website and all that. But for right now, you can just get in touch with us at destinylab@gmail.com. So Neo also has some projects of his own that he's been working on as well that we'll be talking about in the near future, so stay tuned for that. And we're also in talks with a brand new sponsor and brand new company that is forming called StickiestStickers.com, who specialize in real truth movement stickers and supposedly make the stickiest stickers in the world, which is really interesting. They have some paperwork they've sent me that is really fascinating, goes into the detail of explaining not exactly what this is, but that they have discovered some sort of secret formula for such stickiness that their stickers do have. And they, meanwhile, invite people to speculate, I guess, and investigate the origins of this secret formula. Kind of like, I don't know, Coca-Cola and its secret formula, or KFC and its secret spices, I guess. But this is StickiestStickers.com's sticky formula. And so their slogan is even cooler. Their slogan is, "Nothing is stickier than the truth." So this is a way to let everyone know that you support the real truth movement. Your car can become like a driving billboard of truth and stickiness through the help of StickiestStickers.com. So they are supporting us, we are supporting them, and hopefully we can grow this into something big. And like I said, I've been doing my own investigating into the origins of the stickiness. And many people don't realize that the La Brea tar pits are not only interesting because of the amazing history, but also because of the stickiness of the tar itself. The tar in the La Brea tar pits in ancient times was covered oftentimes with dust, leaves, water even, and over many centuries, animals would become trapped inside this tar at the La Brea tar pits. And you can actually visit museum at the George C. Page Museum. It's dedicated to researching the tar pits and displaying these specimens and the animals that died there. And I visited this museum myself as a child, and I remember experiencing the stickiness of the tar, which got me thinking. They had an interactive display there with a bucket and a metal rod sunk into the tar, and they invited children to pull this rod out and experience the stickiness of the tar. So you could feel like what it would feel like for a arm or leg to be trapped in the stickiness of the tar. And as horrifying as that is to think about, being trapped in the La Brea tar pits and slowly just sinking until it covered your mouth and you're just gargling in this sticky substance down your throat and into your nostrils. Just a horrible way to die. But I can tell you firsthand that I've never felt anything quite so sticky, which led me to investigate the local geology of the area a bit. I'm not totally sure if this is true, but rumor has it that this is how the guys at StickiestStickers.com have created their amazing glue. There are rumors of underground tunnels that may even reach to the industrial areas where the actual factories of StickiestStickers.com are located, which at this point is also a secret. This could be where they create the glue, and that the tar pits, from my understanding, as they seep further out into these veins, become actually more sticky and more concentrated. And that these tunnels and these veins of pure stickiness develop over long, long periods of time. And as the concentrate bubbles to the surface, it is the purest of all sticky substances. And from this, and like I said, once again, this is just rumor, this is just speculation, this is just something I've investigated on my own. But from this, I believe that may be the way that they're developing the stickiness of their stickers. So, but they invite other listeners to chime in and give us your ideas of how you believe they've created the stickiest stickers in the world. And I don't know, maybe at some point they'll actually have a prize for the winner. Who knows? So the La Brea tar pit theory is at the top of my list. I do have other ideas that I might discuss in the future, but I'm waiting to gather some more ideas, some more information. This is just speculation at this point. But anyway, stay tuned for that and more on that. There is, however, no speculation when it comes to how grateful we are for all your supporting of this podcast as well as the music at Destiny Lab. For those of you who have not picked up the CDs, you can pick up all 3 CDs, 54 songs for only $25. So that's a pretty good bargain if you feel that you can support us. If not, if you can't afford that or whatever, hit me up. I'll make sure you get the music one way or another. So God bless you guys for that. And here's a little bit more info on Destiny Lab.
Are you a truth seeker? Do you like hip-hop? Are you interested in the mysteries of mankind and nature and asking all those life-examining questions and demand answers? Then it may be your destiny to check out Destiny Lab at destinylab.com, where you'll find music that glorifies God and exposes the very roots and the lies and deceptions that we face today. Issues like creation versus evolution, aliens and UFOs in the spirit realm, the fallen angels and the Nephilim, transhumanism, the New Age, the occult, the Illuminati and the New World Order, and how all these things tie into one cohesive story and one ancient plan that is explained in the Word of God. 3 CDs are currently available at DestinyLab.com. 54 songs in all for only $25. Stay tuned for our 4th album, which is in the works now, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/DestinyLab, and consider giving a love offering to Michael Myers Video Ministry, who creates all of our amazing YouTube videos. And now, back to digging for the truth with Ark and Neo.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Digging for the Truth with Ark and Neo. Tonight, we're going to be digging into a pretty important subject and relatively new on the scene subject, the idea of transhumanism. And we're going to kind of dig into some of these things. And this is something that I've kind of studied a little bit. And some of the ideas that I'm going to be talking about tonight are going to be building up to the ultimate idea of transhumanism. I want to kind of lay a foundation out here talking about the history of people using technology or the idea of some sort of man-made vessel and interacting with the demonic or spiritual realm. And so that's what I'm going to kind of talk about first, and then we're going to go into how that relates to transhumanism. So, Neo, I don't know how much you've looked into the whole transhumanism thing. Have you looked into that at all? Or?
Well, not a lot, but maybe you can just start by giving us a brief overview of what transhumanism is, and maybe it'll give me a better understanding of what it is as well, and our listeners.
Well, I guess I could tell you what transhumanists say. I guess it depends on who you ask what the definition of transhumanism is. From my standpoint, I think transhumanism is basically like the end game. I think it's the setting of the stage for the Antichrist. It's basically the long storyline that's been played out on many stages, and it's basically leading all up to this thing that we've seen in science fiction and in movies, and even within ancient times, these ideas of merging into a vessel has always been there. So from a transhumanist point of view, I guess if you ask them, It's the idea of uploading mankind's consciousness into a computer, or uploading humanity into what they call the singularity, which is the end game of what they want to get to, where that all of us are one under this sort of like universal mind, where we know all each other's thoughts, they know all our thoughts, and we can all kind of like coexist. So no one ever dies, basically. It's all about escaping God's judgment in the end. I mean, that's what I get from it. So
yeah, that's interesting. I kind of thought that it had to do with more into genetic manipulation and DNA, but it sounds like it's almost on a spiritual level in many cases.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they've done is they've actually laid out a time frame, and I'll kind of get into that, where they call it the 2045 initiative. They've had this kind of get together where they've brought in all these billionaires and spiritualists and high level scientists that are basically working all under this umbrella to lead up to this point. And a lot of it is all about the DNA manipulation, but the end game ultimately is to leave our DNA, leave our physical bodies behind, and actually become uploaded into sort of a bodiless realm. But to get there, definitely there's going to be the whole hybridization of mankind into computers and technology. So
oh wow.
But yeah, I'll kind of get into that. I mean, it's really a deep subject. So
yeah, it kind of reminds me of a lot of the story, especially in the Book of Enoch, and talks about that the fallen angels actually taught mankind many different technologies. How to make swords and how to beautify women and different things like that. And is this kind of being kind of pushed by fallen angels? Do you think? I think that's kind of the people behind this, it's a new type of technology being taught to man. Again, that they're convincing that it's a good thing for man. But do you think it's really part of Satan's goal to ruin man in the end?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's definitely tied into the fallen angels. I think in the end, Satan and the demons know they're going to be exposed for who they are, so they've got to sort of lay this storyline out that they can kind of follow to where they won't be seen as the bad guys. They got to put a twist on it. And I think if you look at all the different cultures, the Aztecs to the Dogon tribes, the Sumerians to Tibetan monks, they all believe that in distant times there were this communication with otherworldly beings. Every historical account from every nation is convinced that the most advanced, ideas of like astronomy and mathematics, like you were saying, and magic and pharmakia and genetic manipulation is all given from these advanced beings from the stars, And I think that's throughout time, it seems what the fallen angels have kind of packaged themselves as. And, many of the ideas have been gone through, there's a lot of great researchers out there talking about right now, Tom Horn and Rob Skiba and Gon Shimura and Steve Quayle, Chuck Missler, and they're all doing some amazing things. Gon Shimura's coming out with his Age of Deceit 2. I don't know if you've seen Age of Deceit 1. But
oh, yeah.
It's just incredible. Really goes into a lot of this in depth.
Yeah.
And then, there's a lot of other people in the non-Christian realm. That's what's so interesting about the transhumanism thing. It's something that everyone's recognizing and dealing with. And this idea of merging in science into merging spirituality into science has been kind of a long time coming.
Oh, yeah.
And, people like I listen to Joe Rogan's podcast and Duncan Trussell's podcast quite a bit, who are not Christians, but they talk about transhumanism all the time. And it's interesting to kind of gather the different ideas and worldviews of how these people are explaining these things and what twist they're putting on it, and how it actually is aligning perfectly with prophecy.
Oh, yeah.
And they don't even realize that a lot of these people aren't aware of biblical prophecy or how that's going to happen, but they are sort of talking about different ways, and there are all these different layers that overlap that seem to connect. So yeah, definitely I think it's tied into the fallen angels.
Now, it kind of reminds me of kind of the Jewish mysticism, and even what we've seen more recently with Madame Blavatsky, and how they had channeled information that they considered, they were special, and they got this new information that was supposed to help mankind kind of progress to the new level of consciousness or evolution. Do you think that all ties in? Do you think that they're using this channeling to kind of give their information to these mystics and these new age people today to kind of push this?
Yeah. I mean, I think, Blavatsky, from my understanding, she wasn't really necessarily doing anything new. She was just basically like a gatherer of information. She basically just traveled all over the world, had a lot of money and funding to gather all these mystery school religions and ideas from these different Kabbalic ideas and Gnosticism and the Rosicrucians, all these different ideas to make the Theosophical movement, which was basically an umbrella of all these ancient Egyptian, Eastern philosophies and magical practices. So that's what Freemasonry is, and that's what all these things seem to be tied into, is this same original sin regurgitated over and over again in some sort of repackaged way throughout these different times, and always kind of hidden as some sort of secret knowledge, just like the serpent did in the Garden of Eden. So Satan has never made anything. I mean, he's never created anything original for himself. All he can do is twist everything that God has made. So
that reminds me of the movie series that had Christopher Walken in it, with the fallen angel. He was basically a fallen angel. I think it was called The Prophecy.
Yeah.
And they couldn't learn anything. Even though they were extremely intelligent, they didn't have the ability to learn new things. In fact, they couldn't even drive. They had to recruit humans to drive for them. Even though they were unbelievably intelligent and had all these powers, they didn't have the ability to do simple tasks, because they were almost like pre-programmed to only be able to do
sure,
what they were created to do. So I don't know if that kind of...
Well, yeah, I mean, I think probably in the angelic realm overall, there seems to be different rankings given to the angelic realm, and whether that means they are just incapable or just unwilling, or they're just almost like this is their mission, this is the thing that they were created to do, so they don't delve outside of that. But I think definitely there are things that the angelic realm was not allowed to do from what the Bible tells us that we as humans with free will are able to do. And so there was a lot of, I think, jealousy and envy based in that. But this is all part of God's plan. And I think that's the main thing with laying out all this data, is it really gives you an overall picture. And I don't have anything figured out by any means. I mean, there's so much information out there, you just cannot go through it all. But the more you look, the more you see that there's overlaps and all these connections. But yeah, it seems to always go back to the idea that man's divine, that we're evolving to this higher intelligence, and that aliens are guiding this, or that we ourselves possibly are these aliens. That's another big thing that's come up. The idea of this time traveling, that if we're going to eventually reach this point of this omega point, or this singularity where we are uploading our consciousness into a computer, then who's to say we haven't already done that a long time ago? And basically these beings that are coming and visiting us are time travelers, and that's what a lot of these people believe as well.
Yeah, I recently saw an article. I think it was the Queen of Spain, who was in her 90s, and she had been quoted, I think, as saying that she's looking forward to extending her life basically indefinitely. And she looks like she's just basically on her deathbed. But some of these people are they kind of just so desperate to extend their lifespans or somehow that they'll be willing to do anything. Even I remember there's a baseball player named Ted Williams who got his head cryogenically frozen so that he could someday be brought back, somehow by being frozen.
Yeah. Yeah, Walt Disney did the same thing, and it said that, a lot of these people that have done that, especially the people early on, were definitely on the inside knowledge of some of the stuff that's happening. The people within the 2045 initiative seem to actually be saying that they've already figured this stuff out in a sense. That basically they know how to do this already, but they know they can't do it like so fast or so abruptly that it just freaks everybody out. So that's why they've laid out this timeline of this 2045 initiative that, okay, we're going to, step by step, level by level, get you there without completely disrupting our entire society and world along with it. So I think it's actually very ancient, and it's just coming to the fruition because it's nothing new. I mean, nothing's new under the sun. I mean, these are the exact same ideas that Hitler was into. I mean, Hitler was all about creating the new man. His ideas were based in the occult. His ideas were connected to Blavatsky's ideas. And he was, a lot of people don't know, but into channeling. I mean, he was involved with the Thule Society and channeling beings that they believed were giant albino Nordic beings that lived in the Hollow Earth. And we'll kind of get into that a little bit later. But
didn't Hitler really go after ancient artifacts that he thought could give him and his group power? You see the Indiana Jones movies where they, the Nazis were going after the Ark, the Raiders of the Lost Ark, the first one. And supposedly he had captured the Spear of Longinus.
Yeah.
And
Spear of Destiny.
Yeah, the Spear of Destiny that we'd actually captured. I guess the Spear of Destiny was the spear that had pierced Jesus' side, according to legend. And whoever held that spear couldn't be killed, and so many of the knights, and they were part of the Templars, I guess.
Yeah.
And whoever held that spear and used it couldn't be killed, and Hitler wanted that. And the story goes that when we captured a secret bunker that held that artifact that I think he had got from Austria, that was the day that he supposedly died. And so it kind of perpetuates the myth that, if he doesn't possess that spear, who possessed the spear will, live together. And, the Grail, the Holy Grail, all these different things. Are they searching for artifacts as well? Is there some kind of a power in these ancient artifacts, or is that part of this transhumanism?
I think it all goes back to channeling. I think most of that information is gathered through the channeled realms, these people that are in touch with these demonic realms, and these channeled spirits are giving them information. It's the eternal carrot on the stick. They're constantly telling somebody, just around the corner, if you could just find this secret, word or this secret information and put these two things together and gather all 12 crystal skulls, suddenly the porthole will be opened. And, it's just this, like I said, it's just, one step to the next, to the next, to the next. And once they get to that step, then they just change it from the Mayan calendar 2012 to just the next deception. So that's how it's always been, it seems like.
Yeah, that sounds like how a really interesting guy named Bill Schneblin describes his kind of descent into the occult. He really talked about that they really worked off of your ego.
Yeah.
And that you wanted to, basically it goes to Genesis where you will become a god. And that's what they promise. So these demons seem to use the same technique time and time again to kind of entice humans to do their bidding, when in the end, it's always destruction every time.
Yeah, I talk about that so much in our music. And I tell people, once you recognize that, you suddenly begin to see it everywhere, and it's just one of these things that kind of exposes the supernatural realm, because most of these things aren't necessarily connected by any rooted foundation. They all just seem to arrive at the same conclusion and then think they come up with something new and original. And it's the oldest lie in the book.
Yeah.
So
now, are these same groups that are, pushing for this transhumanism type scenario, are they also the ones that are part of the Merovingians, the supposed holy bloodline, who believe that they're have a divine blood because they're the it's the old story that's been perpetuated by some of these people that says that that Jesus faked his death, he escaped and had children, and and the bloodline have been the kings of Europe throughout the ages. And are these the same groups perpetuated by these demonic beings?
There's so many different rabbit trails that Satan has created that all lead back to the same tree. I mean, they're all just part of this same conglomerated idea, but I think they're just for a different group of people. He's able to create all these different disguises depending on whatever group's belief system want to open themselves up to. It seems to always go back to intent, and I kind of get into that. I got some notes here on the whole idea of intent and how I think that's really connected to all this and how that's leading kind of up to this. I mean, we've all been told from the evolutionists' idea since evolution has started that we're getting higher and higher to this bigger and bigger level, and that's exactly what alchemy, the alchemists of ancient times, is exactly what they were trying to do. The whole idea where you hear alchemists turning lead into gold. Well, once you dig deep into that, you start to realize that that was actually just a human. The idea of keep turning a human from lead into gold or reaching this higher level of godhood. And that even within alchemy, the roots of alchemy fundamentally are the original sin. The fundamentals of things like magic, or the ideas of the secret, or the law of attraction, the idea that you speak things into existence through your intent or by believing them into being, is all part of this hook. It's the bait that Satan can use to hook people in. And so alchemy has like this whole process where they want to ascend back up into the primordial kind of androgynous state of being. They think that God was neither male or female. He's this androgynous kind of being. And they think that they can, I guess, get back to that state. So the idea of fusing man with whatever could be imagined is part of that agenda. The fundamentals are, they call it the four stages of the origin of mankind. So starting with the highest state of androgyny, and then falling progressively lower down through the mineral and vegetable and the animal state. And so their whole idea is to basically, through creating chimeras or hybrids, to create this idea of a being that has like hermaphroditic qualities, or the ability to recreate themselves without having to have male or female or a god or any type of like thing other than themselves able to do it. And they, it gets into some really creepy, weird stuff. I mean, it's like, the Baphomet, if you've ever seen that, the goat character, it's an androgynous being. It has the upper torso of a female with breasts and then the lower torso of a male. So exclusively kind of showing this androgynous qualities of the male and female.
Oh, so it's different from the satyr, male and female. Characteristics. That's interesting. Going back to that Christopher Walken movies, The Prophecy, I think there's 2 or 3 of them. That's how they described the angels, that they were, they were hermaphrodites. They had both female and male genitalia.
Interesting.
And there was a lot of interesting things there. I don't know how they got their information, but it's kind of a interesting movie series.
Those things definitely are floating around. Those ideas are floating around in these realms. Some of these ideas are from the Cabala or Jewish mysticism, which are basically the black magic of Judaism. So it's like the Gnostic Christians. I mean, Gnostic Christians are basically like Luciferians. I mean, Gnosticism basically says, I don't know how they can call it Gnostic Christianity, because Gnostics basically believe that God is the bad guy and Satan is the good guy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Luciferianism.
Well,
and so there
seems to be a philosophy that goes around, and it's used in the business world today, called the Hegelian dialectic. And that kind of sounds like what you're describing, where you create two opposing views, two dichotomies that are against each other, like Republicans versus Democrats, or
it's a duality is what it is.
Yeah, a duality, and then they oppose each other, so people try to basically pick sides. They say, "Oh, I'm on this side," but really, there's a predetermined outcome to everything, and it's all being manufactured in this predetermined outcome. And it works so magnificently that it's used all the time, and in businesses they a lot of times use this Hegelian dialectic process to solve problems, and yet it sounds like it's exactly what you're talking about with this duality, this false dichotomy of changing, basically brainwashing people.
Well, it's exactly the same. But what's scary about that, we know that actually is used within the business world, within reality, where people create these false dichotomies, whether it's Team A against Team B, where, I don't know if you heard not too long ago, there was a soccer match where the soccer fans, literally there's a bad call, and they attack the referee, and the referee stabbed one of the fans or one of the players because he's carrying a knife, and the fans came out of the stands, 20 plus, a horde of fans, and ripped this guy limb from limb, killed him, decapitated his body, pulled his body parts off him, and put his head on a stake.
Wow!
This was at a soccer game.
Yeah. So that's crazy.
Yeah, this really did happen.
So talk about the Roman, getting people into a fervor. I mean, that is just crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Well, especially when you take anything else to live for away. When you live in a world where there is no right or wrong or good or bad, and we all are just animals, like evolution tells us, then why not act like a monkey?
Yeah.
Why not act like a bunch of gorillas and just, rule the jungle, basically? Beast-type mentalities happening. These people are just truly believe that, hey, I am just an animal, right? So that's what we do.
Might as well act like it, yeah. Might as well act like a monkey,
But yeah, I think...
wow.
And what's scary about this as well is that they try to use this twist of the false dualities, and that's what they merge over to God. And they say, well, God did the same thing. God created this idea of good and evil, and there really is no good or evil. And that and this whole idea in the New Age within the occult realm is this idea of removing the duality and embracing both good and evil as one. So that's huge. You hear over and over again of this idea that you can't run from anything that you think is dark or evil or scary. You must embrace it and jump into it head on. And especially within the shamanic realm or the drug-related realm, these people are going on these DMT and ayahuasca trips. They're often told that, you must let the serpent swallow you, or you must jump into the abyss, or do this really scary, evil thing. And these beings or these entities that they're interacting with are telling them to do this. And they're overall, at the end, they're saying, you must let me enter into you. I know it's scary, but that's what's holding you back is your own fears. Once you let go of your fears, then you'll become enlightened. So it's this idea of letting down your own guard so that they can dwell within you. So this is, the same ancient idea that's always been around, and science has just been able to morph into it. And I think a lot of this is being done through the demonic realm without people even knowing.
Yeah, it sounds like how the serpent enticed Eve into doing, taking of the forbidden fruit, which God said not to do, and he questioned it. He just said, "Oh, did God really say that? Oh, look at it. It looks nice. It must be good."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, so it's the same scheme. It's the same technique over and over again
every time
throughout history, and people can't see it. They're so blind to what's happening that they, give it to it. Let me ask you a question. It kind of reminds me of, people that believe in reincarnation, that, they believe, oh, I've got this secret knowledge. I can now, when I know that I'm reincarnated because I can speak German and I couldn't do that, I've never even learned that. So it must be true that I was this famous, German king from 17 whatever, and yet they don't realize, if you're from a Christian perspective, you realize that there's these entities called demons that seek to inhabit humans.
Sure.
And, they have inhabited people in the past, and all this knowledge of the previous people they had inhabited and destroyed are being manifest in the new people. And it's unbelievable that it's never made a connection. These people don't think that that's a possible explanation when it's so simple that there's a being that's against you, that's trying to deceive you. And they inhabited somebody from 1752 that spoke German, and now they're manifesting those qualities in you.
Yeah.
And doesn't mean you were born back then or reincarnated.
Sure. Yeah, no, I mean, the Bible calls them familiar spirits for a reason, because they are familiar with you, your history, and your family's history. And a lot of times they can tell you exactly what grandma said, or they can appear as your great Aunt Hilda or whatever, because they basically have demonic infiltration over different families and are familiar to that history. And isn't it interesting that a lot of these people that have these reoccurring identifications of their resurrected past lives are always kings and queens and great rulers of ancient Egypt or whatever, once again going back to the ego and stroking of man's ego. That seems to be one of the baits that they use is telling people, hey, you're this great person, you've been chosen, and throughout time you've had the same identity. You were Caesar in ancient times, and you were King Tut in another time, and
everybody's the most famous person in the world, and they're
totally,
no one was just a lowly, carpenter, they're always the most famous person on the planet. They can't figure it out, I guess. But
what's so awesome about that is that the greatest person, the most influential person who ever lived was just that, a lowly owned carpenter,
Yeah.
So it's interesting how the demonic realm works. Nothing's new under the sun. It's all the same thing, just repackaged over and over and over again. So, when we look at the turn of the century when evolution was coming about, it led right into inevitably this idea of eugenics and this idea of picking the different traits to create the ultimate man. And this was being pushed, and it was being embraced at county fairs across America, and it wasn't seen as anything bad. It was scientific. It was good. And I think this was actually one of the first steps toward the transhumanism agenda actually being presented and packaged to a modern day age. And once Hitler came along and basically got busted for basically doing the exact same thing and was exposed for the same idea of trying to, through evolution, create this God man, that these ideas kind of had to go underground. And so it's kind of interesting. All these ideas went underground. And so the most modern ideas of eugenics lasted up until the 50s and 60s, until Sir Julian Huxley, who was a leading eugenicist, who came up with the term transhumanist movement.
Ah, that's interesting.
And the entire reason he came up with the word transhumanism was to come up with a new word for eugenics, which was a bad, naughty word. So
is eugenics basically eliminating all of the races except for one, or basically evolving mankind to a better state? Is that what eugenics is?
Yeah, that's how they packaged it. They packaged it as the idea of looking for the families with the best traits, and then getting their children together and just keeping a pure bloodline, and also athletic traits. I mean, I'm not sure exactly how it was packaged because it didn't last long as a public thing, but it actually, you can look back and see all these pictures of them having county fair booths with, join the eugenics movement, come for, fun, family-friendly things, And I mean, people back then did not understand. I mean, they had when evolution just first came out and eugenics first came out, they had pygmies in this Bronx Zoo.
Wow.
They had human pygmies that they had on display in the zoo, and they presented this as the missing link of mankind.
I think I've heard of it. Wow. Is this the same group that went to Australia and hunted Aborigines and basically cut their heads off so that they could get skulls to show people?
Yeah, it's,
just killed them.
Yeah, it's all interconnected. It's absolutely incredible how many crossovers there are here. It's undeniable once you start digging into how these groups were all following. So Satan's basically, transmitted this information, regurgitated in all these different versions to all these different people throughout time, and it kind of systematically brainwashed people all over the world into this idea that we are our own gods, or that aliens created us through this sort of panspermia. And I think that's ultimately going to be the idea that's presented scientifically, and even people today, the leading scientists are presenting panspermia. Yeah. Richard Dawkins on a recent interview, who supposedly says there is no God. Absolutely, there is no God out there. He's open to the idea that aliens created us, though. So
so panspermia is basically that aliens seeded human DNA to kind of further our evolution. There was a little bit of life on Earth, and then they came in and kind of sped up the process. Is that kind of what panspermia is all about?
Yeah, there's a couple different ideas of why and how it's all done. I mean, there's all kinds of different ideas, but yeah, in a nutshell, it's either idea that aliens created us and just left us, or that they put some of their DNA into us to see how that would interact with apes, and that they're coming back later. There's all these ideas of DNA manipulation in that route, but the royal bloodlines, a lot of these royal elites and the secret societies seem to have this idea, the ruling class throughout time, that they are some sort of special bloodline or part of the seeded planet, or the seeded bloodline from another planet or another dimension. And before Darwin, many of the groups in the royal societies in the 1800s were really dominated by these occultic ideas. There was a group called the X Club, who in the 1800s, whose fundamental belief was the idea that man was seeded by an alien race from another planet. And this always seems to be the controlling occult mechanism that guides these kind of ideas.
Oh, wow.
And so Darwin's idea was nothing new. And this was talked about way back in even ancient Greek times and whatnot as well. So this isn't a new idea. It's been repackaged and it's been regurgitated in a number of different ways. But it's been basically, I think the way they've been able to push it through is because they've connected it from the sort of shamanic idea now over into science. Yeah. And so that's what has made it acceptable to everyday people.
It seems like that science is starting to mingle with the supernatural, especially the occultic part of it. I've heard some stories that, especially in where they're doing brainwashing techniques or trying to create the super soldier, that they are actually integrating occultic type practices with science to make soldiers basically immune to pain, or do things that they would never do on their own, that are just unbelievably barbaric. And it's kind of interesting that science has kind of gone back to this occultic type atmosphere, and again, it kind of shows where some of these people are getting their knowledge. They're getting them possibly from these demonic beings, or the fallen angels are teaching them these things again.
Yeah, I don't think it ever left. I think it's always been here. It's just been more hidden. It's now being externalized because they can't hide this information anymore. It's out. The cat's out of the bag. I mean, if you look back in the Cold War time, the Russians were huge into this mystics and clairvoyants that were able to move things with their minds and supposedly see into do out-of-body experiences and remote viewing. And that's what really kind of started. If you watch the movie The Men Who Stare at Goats, it's all about these ideas of these people that basically did remote viewing. And it is a true story that.
Oh yeah, Ed Dames. I think he's the guy that I've heard several times. He's a real interesting guy, and he was in a government sponsored program to extract information. He's basically a spy, but he did it with supernatural. Who knows how he did it, but I'm sure it was.
Well, they use occult. He admits he uses occult ritual ways. I mean, some of the leading so-called remote viewers are admitted Luciferians. People like Aaron Donahue, who claims that he is literally breeding a new kind of child, the new children of tomorrow, who will be the ones who will allocate our resources for us because they will be more evolved. So he is supposedly working with a group of people that are actually, I don't know exactly how it's all done, but he's claimed that he is actually working with a system to where he is actually bringing forth this new generation of children who will be our leaders and as he phrases it, allocators of resources.
Yeah.
So
you brought up an interesting point about the how the demonic realm manifests differently, and it's kind of being manifest as aliens now, and that in the past, and I remember reading this way back with the I.D. Thomas, the Omega Conspiracy, and he talked about that in the past that the succubus and the incubus, these demonic things that would visit people at night and basically have intercourse with them, and then vampires, werewolves, and all these different things were different manifestations of the demonic realm, and now they're manifesting as aliens because they've got a new, it's not new, but it's a different way. It's kind of integrating science a little bit instead of what their beliefs were back then of different things. So it's real interesting.
Yeah, it's a way to legitimize the spirit realm. I mean, people aren't willing to believe in animal spirits and elves and fairies and incubus and succubus anymore. But aliens, that's scientific. That's something that's evolved in another planet. Anybody can believe in that. So it's a way for them to legitimize this ancient disguise, who is nothing new than the elves and fairies and animal spirits of old, just wearing a new masqueraded, conceived mask of an alien. And people like this Joe Jordan, the CE4 research group, have compiled hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people's testimonies who have completely ended so-called abductee experiences that they had for, in some cases, decades, ended it by confronting and rebuking these beings in the name and authority of Jesus Christ. And it stops. The same is true with sleep paralysis. Chris White has done some incredible research at sleepparalysis.org, where he talks about the same thing, compiling all kinds of people's information who have completely stopped sleep paralysis, who have suffered from these tormenting experiences for sometimes decades from this demonic realm by confronting these beings in the name and authority of Christ. These are just simply different conduits that these beings have been able to tap into when we have our guard down. And once people realize what it is, Satan doesn't want to have anything to do with it.
Yeah. Now it seems like is Satan and his minions and the demons, and we talked about this earlier in the Nephilim podcast, that we kind of believe that the demons are the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim, and that they're not, the fallen angels are a different entity. But anyway, these demons, who seek embodiment of people, are they actually trying to seem like they're good now? So it seemed like in the past they tried to scare people and they were more evil, but now they seem to be trying to manifest in a way that it seems good. You look at the movie The Golden Compass, where it was absolutely evil, in my opinion. I saw it, and this is a children's show, but they wanted to be possessed by their demons.
Yeah.
And that was a good thing.
Yeah.
And that seems to be the new thing, that we want to embrace these entities who are going to help us, and they're going to make us better.
I mean, these are ancient ideas that are just coming forward and presented as, something new and different. But if you go back, this is ancient stuff, this accepting a demonic being within you. I mean, that's what demons want. Ultimately, demons want to indwell a physical body. And the Bible is very clear about that. When Christ cast out the legion, the first thing these beings asked of Jesus, they said, you've come before our time or whatever, and they asked to be cast into this herd of pigs.
The deviled ham.
Yeah, deviled ham. So he cast them into this herd of pigs, and they jumped off a cliff and committed suicide. But it's interesting how that's what they want, ultimately.
Yeah. They don't want to be sent back to the pit. So that's, Yeah, but I think, ultimately that's the main thing they want, and I think that's the ultimate goal of the transhumanist movement, as well as this idea that we can back up our consciousness into a machine, clone our bodies, so in case we get injured, that we have our backed up consciousness already there, and then a clone of ourselves waiting. So, then if we get injured, we can just, download our consciousness into that machine. But then the question arises automatically is, what keeps a demonic being or Satan himself from possessing one of these machines, from taking control of one of these non-human robotic mixtures of iron and clay, like, Daniel spoke about in the end times. Oh, wow.
And how do we know that's not representing human and technology mixture, this mixture?
It sounds like the Matrix.
Yeah, the ghost in the machine. I mean, this idea has been presented a lot of times, and I think what is a Ouija board? A Ouija board is a piece of cardboard and a planchet that you put on top. But that's basically, if you think about it, all humans, in a sense, are walking Ouija boards if you open yourselves up to it. We are all conduits. And a lot of people out there are open conduits. They admit it. They say, hey, I'm just kind of like, when I go out to think of what to come up with for this movie or for this idea or write this book, I just kind of sit down and become this conduit, kind of like what a true Christian does for the Holy Spirit. Well, again, Satan can't make anything new, but he can always mimic and disguise what God offers and Christ offers through the Holy Spirit. So he offers a demonic manifestation. And you hear these people talking about the burning in the bosom, or the people that take yoga, this heat or sort of serpent energy coming up their spine and up into their third eye or whatever. I mean, all this stuff seems to correlate to the same type of demonic interference. And so, I mean, if you think about, the downloading of consciousness, downloading demonic entities, and putting a demon in the driver's seat of a robot or a cloned human hybrid that has been integrated into this merged technology that's been basically allowed by mankind, that's what the demonic realm needs, is intent. They need permission. That's all they need, as a matter of fact, it seems, is permission.
Yeah.
Because the Ouija board has no power. The crystal ball has no power. Magic wands and all those things, they have no power within themselves. It is the intent and the giving over, the opening yourselves up to this beings and giving your permission that all magic is rooted in.
I was going to say you watch these movies or these TV shows about the ghost hunters and these guys, and I was absolutely flabbergasted when I heard this guy. They're basically talking to the spirits in these haunted areas. They're saying use us to give us a sign. Use our bodies as a conduit, or they'll say use this box to communicate. Give us a sign. And so they're basically inviting these demons into their bodies or to use this technology, which again is kind of tied into what you're saying, the technology piece. And it's absolutely amazing that the technology could be used in a supernatural way, which begs a question of what we've seen in the last 50 years. Technology has absolutely gone crazy, and you're thinking, where does this technology come from?
And how many people really know how it works? How many people really understand how a computer or a TV or radio wave or any of these things work or were created or made? And what's amazing when you talk about technology and invention is almost every single scientific invention, whether it's the flight of the Wright brothers, whether it's electricity, there's multiple people coming up with these ideas through the simultaneously through the muse, and that's what they call it. Then there's many names for it, and I think it's basically God is allowing his plan to unfold. God is the great storyteller. He's had these things written throughout time, and Christian, non-Christian, all people have been cast in a role, and we're all basically fulfilling our certain roles within this script to the stage of reality. And so people are unaware. Most of these groups, I think, are unaware, but they're working as a combined, cohesive unit that's part of this, working as kind of cogs in the machine to play out this movie. So, I mean, if you take a step back and look at even, people like Tesla admitted that 90% of his information came from just tapping into the
dreams, and he would just wake up with the information already done, and without him having even to do any experimentation. It was a fully functional system.
Yep.
That he could somehow do in his mind. It was almost, like I said, almost supernatural. And so many of the inventors have described these same things. They're like, we describe it as, they're like savants or something, but how could they get knowledge that they weren't taught? They weren't taught this knowledge. They just, from schools or books, they just inherently knew it, which is almost incredible. Because these things are so complex.
How many people have tapped into this muse and never said it or admitted it, but they were actually in some way doing just that and knowingly doing just that, tapping into some sort of outside source that was giving them this information. So, either through direct inspiration or through, this imparting of knowledge, that it's like, we have God allowing knowledge given to people through his means, and then we have other people that are tapping into this other infiltrated muse, so to speak, or this other spirit that is basically a guiding force that is giving them understanding. The more that they open themselves up to that, the more that reality becomes real.
Yeah. The book of Daniel chapter 12, talks about, I think, our time where knowledge will increase tremendously. And I think we're seeing that right now, is that the knowledge base of what, is unbelievable how fast technology has increased. And it's almost, supernatural. And the Bible predicts it. There's a prophecy in Daniel chapter 12:4 that, people will go to and fro, about the earth, and that the knowledge will increase in drastic measures. Yeah. And I think we're seeing that. And, even a lot of people talk about the 1948, the Roswell crash, but there's actually two other crashes throughout the earth where this same knowledge about the transistor and the, which basically led into the computer, because the transistor is the basic building block of the computer system, that in Russia and in Germany, that there was other crashes, and these guys all developed the technology again simultaneously. Mm-hmm. And who really invented it? Well, I think they either back engineered it, which I think there was these crashes that they actually found, stuff that they could back engineer. So I think that the demonic forces and the fallen angels used a different technology, but who knows?
I think that this whole thing with these beings interacting and giving information through technology has actually happened
throughout time. We're just unaware of it. We're just more aware of that it's happening now, and we're seeing it happen now because we have the ability to communicate on a global level. But I mean, if you look at like ancient channelers and the clairvoyants and people that were having this direct interaction, women that claim they're oracles and whatnot, a lot of these people were taking in drugs a lot of times, or these oracles would stand above a mist that would come from the ground, and people say this mist had some hallucinogenic properties possibly. But I think that the shamans and the sorcerers and the oracles have been tapping into these, the higher ruling classes. They'll oftentimes have their own magician or wizard or clairvoyant that they're following, and that is actually guiding a lot of their decisions, and people don't even know it behind the scenes. So I think on the higher levels, Satan has always looked to infiltrate the most influential people, whether that be the kings and queens and the bloodlines. And I think that's why a lot of these bloodlines and people within the higher ruling classes are so into these ideas, because if you were Satan, who are you going to target? It's not, Satan is not omnipresent. He doesn't have an unlimited amount of resources and demons. He only has a limited amount. And so he I'm sure targets the most influential people, or the people most easily corrupted.
A lot of times, the people that rise to the top have unbelievable egos, because you have to have an ego to even want to be on top. So
so they're very open to the idea already.
Wow.
Yeah, it kind of goes hand in hand. But if what's interesting, if you look at what might be considered ancient machines or devices that demonic forces could possibly have possessed or controlled on some level in ancient times, who's to say what those things might have been? I know that a lot of people have talked about the idea of pyramids, the ancient Great Pyramid, that it was some sort of machine or power plant or all these ideas because of its unique structure and attributes, that it somehow acted as a machine or had some sort of other purpose. And who knows that if some sort of ritual was being performed inside, or what exact information was being imparted into the builders. But it may be the same type of things that are happening today on the levels of creating places like CERN, the Large Hadron Particle Collider in Geneva. There's a lot of creepy things going on there, I think, that people don't realize. And same with NASA. And, going back to Hitler, Hitler's original ideas and the German elite of his time were deeply involved with all this direct spirit communication. That was like one of the biggest things that guided his plan, was this connection that he had with these beings through his clairvoyance. He was involved with this with the Thule Society, and they discovered what they called Vril technology. Which was basically where they're creating these machines, going back to the idea of or the concept of a Ouija board or a mundane object being powered by a person, opening their intent over these automatic writings seem to be like blueprints or schematics to create real machines. And there's these ideas that Hitler created the Bell, and created these UFO crafts. They're actual based off technical drawings done through automatic writing through these clairvoyants. So these clairvoyants would do this automatic writing, and then they'd have scientists come in and take that information and create them into diagrams and blueprints for actual machines. But what's fascinating about these UFO crafts is that supposedly this Vril energy was operated by a pilot who had to be like a channel or a psychic type clairvoyant himself. So imagine like in a craft where similar to like a Ouija board, you got to have your hands on the planchet for it to work. When you're in a craft, you got to have your hands on the controls in order for the demonic entities to make this machine actually regulate the power source and come into existence. So supernatural type of means is actually connected and directed through spiritual intent, but then then supernaturally charged into a machine. And so
sounds like Firefox is a Clint Eastwood movie where he was an American spy, and they stole a Russian plane that was so responsive that it could only be controlled by thought. Your human, it was so fast that you couldn't control it with your muscles, because it would take too much time to go from your brain to your hands to make it turn. So you basically had to control it with thought. And that's interesting.
Yeah.
So,
well, and that's what's so amazing is the movies. You know, it's like there are so many movies and so many things that are kind of links in the chain, just planting these seeds here and there, kind of just telling us, giving us hints to what's coming, I think.
Well, you got, Matrix was a huge movie that talked about this type of thing, and then even the movie about where the guy went into the video game, the Tron, and then I think there was a movie that you even worked on called Lawnmower Man. Maybe you could talk a little bit about Lawnmower Man, because that kind of ties into this too.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I actually have some notes on that. I'll get into that. You're talking about this movie Firefox and a flying object. Arthur C. Clarke has this famous quote where he says, once technology becomes undefinable, or basically where people can't figure it out, what's the difference between that and magic?
Yeah.
And it's kind of it's once someone doesn't really understand how it's working, but it just suddenly, through some sort of systematic approach, through alchemical ritual, so to speak, that this suddenly comes into existence. If you look at NASA, for instance, there's a huge overlap. I mean, Jack Parsons was one of the most distinguished NASA scientists of the 20th century. And he was best friends with Aleister Crowley and John L. Hubbard, the leader of Scientology. And so this guy communicated with summoning evil spirits and demons and through rituals and stuff like that. So, he designed several inventions as well. He based most of his technology, he claims he utilizes the pentagram shape. It's a void. He pressed it into the solid rocket fuel to assist in burning. And he claims that he divined or channeled the inspiration for this pentagram design for his fuel system that is still in use today by NASA, was directly communicated through this evil spirit. And, Aleister Crowley was the head of the OTO church, was this Luciferian occultic church. But he's revered by modern NASA lore among most occultists and most transhumanists. And he has a great following. I mean, there's a lot of people really into him. He did some really crazy stuff. I mean, he did what was called the Babylon working, which was a lot of people, I don't know exactly what went into it, but, people say that he would, before each rocket launch, that he would basically dance around chanting poetries like, Crowley's hymn.
And people didn't think he was weird. They just let him do it. Well, he's a little eccentric. I guess we'll just let him do it,
They're all into it. I don't know. Yeah. A lot of people are into it. I mean, there's all these people are into this stuff. It's like the eyes wide shut, He basically would, chant this poetry and dance around, and so his ritual basically, in his own words, was designed to create a being which would completely of its own environment and not of its of this nature, but would be like a golem basically. And if you look into what a golem is a Kabbalic idea of creating a living entity out of clay. Often,
so it's not the Lord of the Rings golem.
This is different. I mean,
I've heard of this where it's a kind of created kind of Frankenstein type thing made out of just elements, basically, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, movies like Frankenstein, some of these movies are actually based off the idea of the ancient golem. But yeah, they called it coincidentally they called it a moonchild, is what he referred to it as, and this is kind of connected to the MK Ultra and Project Monarch trauma victims, I think, and And I think there's a lot of connections into these satanic ceremonies that were basically trying to traumatize people, or how you were talking about earlier, program minds or program Manchurian candidates to carry out roles or tasks at any given time.
Aren't those the groups that basically merge science with occultism? And they tried,
Yes.
you know, that's basically what MK Ultra and there's another movie. He was like a Manchurian candidate, and he was programmed to do these things, but he fought against it. Basically, it was
well, there's a movie called The Manchurian
an old
Candidate.
movie, but I guess I was talking about the Mel Gibson movie that they had, Conspiracy Theory.
Yeah, there's been a few of them like that where people have been programmed killers or programmed people to do things that. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of crazy things.
Did a lot of those programs stem from Nazi experiments on the Jews? Because I'd heard a lot of that they experimented on the Jewish people, and then a lot of those scientists were actually recruited by the United States government to further their experiments. Is that true?
Totally.
Oh, wow.
Totally. Yeah, they were, and they were doing all kinds of. I think ritualistic type things that they were allowing, basically because of the idea of competition. The same reason that they were doing these clairvoyant ideas in the Cold War to compete with what they thought the Russians were doing.
Oh, wow.
And so they claimed that they had to do it just to keep on top of the game.
Yeah. It kind of makes you wonder how many of these, you know, upper echelon evolutionists are completely integrated into the occult as well. They know that it's all a lie, but they're just furthering their agenda of, you know, basically anti-God, and that man is the ultimate.
Yeah, so true.
You know, it's wow.
Which takes us into, let's take a little break here and take an actual song break. I know we didn't do it last podcast. The perfect timing, I think, for the song, which talks a lot about this. This is off our second album, The Original Sin, and the song is The Original Sin by Destiny Lab.
All of us one day will reach the level of the avatars that we have read about in history, the Buddhas and the Jesus.
Everyone's gone.
You ancient serpent, you cast your spell up on this planet with your graven images and your wishes to be worshipped. Witches and warlocks flock like Harry Potter fans, waiting for your new age plan to spread across the land. You got the masses dumped down where you want them, convinced that you don't exist, and now you got them atheist. Some even think they're evolving to a godlike level above and beyond human. These Luciferian lies feed on ego and pride. They come disguised as an angel of light, like the original sin and the first deception. The tree in the garden, don't you see the connection? It's the same old lie that he used back then at the beginning of time, at the fall of man. Have we forgotten the truth within the book of Genesis? Ignorant of the nature of sin, so we dismiss written words of God as an irrelevant myth, but then embrace all these new age thoughts of nonsense.
It's not good or bad. There's no God waiting to punish you because you did one or the other.
There is no God in doom. Everyone's gone. Welcome to the kingdom of heaven, without judgment, without hate, without testing, without anything.
Occult-like practices and pagan worshipping in fact exists. See through the smoke and the mirrors and the mist. From Atlantis to the Miriam fanatical myths, to the UFO connection with the German SS. Secret society elitists from the east and the west. Illuminati and Masonics, man, it all connects. Satanic worship to the depths we don't want to admit. It's a globalized illusion that we gotta correct. Check the symbols and signs like the all-seeing eye. Read the Bible facts to understand the great design. See the writing on the wall, we're living in end times. And even the elect have now bought into the lie. Real Satanists are dressed up in their suits and ties, eating the fruit like these fools who think they are divine. They aren't evolved, they're just blinded by ego and pride, living a lie that disguised like Jekyll and Hyde. Can you deny that these times were all prophesied? Read Matthew 24:24, you decide.
There's no such thing as good or bad. We're judging things far too superficially. There are things that I do, and I know they're evolving. There are other things that are not evolving. It's not good or bad. There's no God waiting to punish you because you did one or the other.
It is now gone. Everyone's gone.
All right, so that was The Original Sin by Destiny Lab. Yeah, that song kind of really goes into exactly kind of what we're talking about tonight. The original plan of the serpent, ye shall be as gods. And some of those quotes that were in that song, or those sound clips, are from actual leading New Agers and evolutionists saying, you know, we are all God. You won't be judged. We are gods. You know, so it's definitely rampant in our culture, and so it's unapologetically presented. So
it seems like it always works. You know,
yeah,
there's always
change.
willing recipients of that original lie, and people just line up to, you know, they can become a god.
Ego never goes away. You know, that's the root of sin is ego and pride. So that's why Lucifer himself fell. So it works, like you said. But yeah, I mean, going back into kind of like this Jack Parsons and the whole Golem thing. You know, he was definitely trying to create these really, you know, crazy ideas, and all this stuff was. It's not like he was just some, you know, off the wall guy. I mean, he was deep into studying alchemy and the Philosopher's Stone and creating this Golem character. You know, like I said, going back to the idea of alchemy. I mean, alchemy is a metaphor for turning lead into gold, or otherwise man into God. That's the alchemist's rule, and it's an emulation of the divine creative source and life-giving powers, kind of Genesis and the resurrection that Christ had, and that's what they're trying to mimic. That's what they're trying to disguise here by creating these forces themselves, or creating an atmosphere, or even the idea that you can do it. It's the carrot on the stick. Whether you ever reach it or not isn't really important to Satan. It's just the idea that you know, given a little bit of smoke and mirrors, you know, to keep you going around the next corner. So in Jewish folklore, a golem is where this all comes from, is Jewish mysticism and the Cabala. It's an animated anthropomorphic being created entirely from inanimate matter. So the word used to mean amorphous, unformed material, usually made out of stone and clay. And so the most popular idea of the golems, at least in more modern times, was in the 1890s. It came from a guy named Rabbi Lowe out of Prague. And he's almost kind of a mythic creature in the 16th century. But one version says that he created a golem to protect the Jewish population of Prague from the Emperor Rudolf II's dominion over them. And so Prague, perhaps, is what's interesting, is one of the most occult and alchemy capitals of Europe. And aside from the Golem legends, it has a long traditions of also puppets and dolls and magic shows of various kinds, which is kind of interesting because that's always...
It's like Chucky.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, that's interesting, man, because it is. I mean, that's where these ideas kind of stem from. The idea of an inanimate character coming alive.
Pinocchio and all that stuff. It kind of comes from the same thing.
Exactly. And if you were to look into people like Pinocchio, the creators of him, that he was well aware of what a golem was. So these ideas have been around for a long time. The ideas of puppet shows and magic shows are also kind of interesting, that those were also very popular among kings and queens of ancient Europe. The idea of animating something to life. Even today, we love animations. We love video games. I mean, it seems to be something that appeals to human nature, the idea of creating a false reality or creating a false animated character of some sort that we can control. So it's kind of interesting. And Now, in Czech folklore, and Islamic folklore as well, there's the idea of a golem. And it's usually, coincidentally, a giant character. It's like a Nephilim being. It's described as being a giant. Although sometimes it also is, it's either one or the other. It's either described as a giant being or like a super tiny being, like that could live inside of like a beaker, like a glass beaker.
Now, were they made from like living body parts, or was it made from like mud and things like that were somehow animated?
Usually it says that it's made of mud or clay, but there's also the idea that you could animate like for instance, like a mandrake root. In medieval times, that was used to create golems, and so it kind of changed throughout time, kind of how Satan is disguised now as an alien, the demonic realm disguised as an alien. He's done the same thing throughout other times. Once medieval times came into being and people were actually working in laboratories and not around, just a fire pit chanting and doing crazy rituals, it became more scientific in the medieval times where they had actual chemical processes and they were beginning to understand how these chemical compounds worked. And so there's all these stories and drawings and pictures of these medieval alchemists who claim to actually make these golems inside beakers. And so you see these pictures of these people gathered around a glass beaker that's glowing, and this little alien creature inside the glass beaker talking to them. No different than, somebody in their crystal ball, gazing into their crystal ball. I think it's all the same thing. It's basically an intent. It's a machine or an interface that man creates. Yeah. He gives permission over to the demonic realm to take over, and through that intent, these beings somehow are able to interact.
It seems kind of interesting that a lot of people that get into the occultic studies are actually very intelligent people. You talk about Isaac Newton, and Isaac Newton was actually really believed in the Bible, and he actually studied what he considered to be, Solomon's temple, and even Solomon himself. But yet they both kind of delved into occultic studies and alchemy. Newton was big into alchemy. And he wanted to create, like you said before, the Philosopher's Stone and something to create something into gold. And so it seems like a certain type of person, the very intelligent, the one that is kind of susceptible to some of these teachings. And so it might be, for me, from our listeners, and even for us, we've got to be diligent to, protect ourselves, because maybe this is how Satan entices the people that really think on a real deep level about the things of the universe and how things really work. So, I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. I think we'd be amazed at how many of our founding fathers were doing some of these things behind closed doors. I don't think we have any clue about how much occult practices were actually involved within the founding of our country.
Yeah.
I think if anybody wants to really dig deep into the origins of our country and how they are connected Freemasonically, look into documentaries by Golem Films, Jeremiah Films, or Riddles and Stone, Megiddo 1 and Megiddo 2.
Chris Pinto, I think, is the guy that does a lot of that. Yep.
Chris Pinto and Joe Schimmel. They got some great documentaries that are, I would say, probably the most in-depth that I've ever watched would be Megiddo 2 and Riddles and Stone and some of those. They're incredible. But they're all these things are interconnected. I think a lot of people were very well aware of these things within the beginnings of evolution, eugenics, and on into transhumanism. But they're kept behind closed doors because they know it scares people. They know that these things are just creepy. And unless someone has, like you said, the Holy Spirit, the Word of God as a foundation, and basically guarding ourselves through Christ, it's not something to delve into and to dig into. But I think we have to be vigilant because we need to know what's going on. But
I think even I.D. Thomas talked about kind of the insight that I just talked about, and you just talked about, that certain people that are really want to know the truth and they really do a lot of research are susceptible to some of these type of things, because once you go down the rabbit trail, it just keeps leading you into more and more things that just are very fascinating. But the basic principle, you really got to, like I said, you got to guard yourself. You got to be in prayer. You got to be in the Word to keep yourself insulated from these beings, because they are smart. They can entice people in many different ways to basically get away from God and His work. And so prayer and the other part are just integral for what you need to do. And I think even other people, Marzulli and some of these other people have said, he had just kind of stepped back for a while.
Totally.
Because it was affecting him. And to be able to recognize that and have friends that can kind of keep you insulated from these things and make sure that you're not going down the wrong trail is important.
Yeah, I think the main thing is grounded in the Word of God, the actual Bible itself. I think there's something supernatural about staying focused on the Bible itself, that is, our connection. That's our foundation. And looking through the lens of the Bible and keeping that as our root guide at all times, it is pretty incredible how many things are out there. And I think it all goes back to, even if we were able to gather all the information that's out there, doesn't mean we could ever even figure it out, even if we did have the information. You can't teach a dog auto mechanics, and the the higher realms of understanding that we just don't have the capacity to even comprehend is just not anything that we'll ever reach. So I think you read the book of Ecclesiastes and Solomon's journey of searching for knowledge, and how it all comes back around to
vanity.
Yeah, exactly.
That describes it, yes.
And really what we can rest in is the simplicity of Christ, truly is where it's at. But yeah, I mean, there's so many things going on today that it's hitting us from all different angles. And what's so scary is kids are being inundated with these things in such an overwhelming factor that we're almost reaching this point where I know people don't want to talk about these things necessarily. The church doesn't like to talk about these things just because it is so confusing, and there's so many rabbit trails that could possibly open up that could lead people astray. But then, at some point you think, well, then you're giving complete submission over to that realm, and it goes back to kind of like what we were talking about earlier, where Satan doesn't make anything.
Yeah.
He's never created anything ever. Nothing new has Satan ever made. He's only twisted things of God.
Yeah.
And you look at geometry and the things that are connected into supposed magic, like all these symbols and things like that. They're all geometric shapes. These things are not necessarily evil in themselves, but the intent and the actual connection or magical properties that are connected to them are the things that are evil. So
it's kind of interesting. I was watching a documentary on Mars, and it was talking about how a lot of the people, when the War of the Worlds radio broadcast came out, that they really believed that we were being invaded by Martians. And there was actually people that committed suicide and jumped off of buildings because they believed this radio station.
Yeah.
And it actually tied back a little bit to evolution, because there was a guy out there that had observed Mars, and he saw lines on Mars, just lines. And he said, man, the lines suggest canals.
Yeah.
So that means if there's canals, there's intelligent life.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, evolutionists, we see life, the most complicated thing in the entire universe, and yet, it had my chance.
Yeah.
So a line means intelligent design. A line on Mars means intelligent design, but yet a human body that can reproduce, can heal itself,
Yeah.
and is more complex than anything that we can design with all our intelligence
Yeah.
is somehow happened by chance.
Yeah, it just shows
And-
the bias. Yeah, I mean, there's a clear bias, of agendas and what aligns with their views they'll embrace and what doesn't they want. It's just like Dawkins admitting that, we could have evolved by an ancient alien race. It's like, really?
Yeah.
Wow. Where all of a sudden, where did you get that information? What evidence do you have for that?
Yeah.
So it's anything but God is what they're willing to embrace. So, but it's just all back to control, just like like the golem, is a idea of creating a slave or a soldier type being, and scientists are actually putting the word out of to actually calling and giving awards for coming up with the best artificial golem intelligence.
What?
There's a summit called the Beyond. There's a summit called the Beyond Artificial Intelligence.
And they're creating a golem. That's what they say.
Yeah, it was held at the University of West Bohemia, and it's calling on researchers to submit papers on how to create an artificial golem intelligence. And so topics for the conference would basically include, building cybernetic brains, the use of Cabala in artificial intelligent labs, and talking about how this was used in the Middle Ages in Europe and the Middle East, and how that could be used today. So.
And these are the big think tanks that are promoting this occultic contest, basically.
The deepest of the deep.
Oh wow!
That's just it. I mean, these are the
Shows
elitists.
where they're at. Yeah.
Yeah, these are the elitists. These are the highest of the high. And, at the 2045 Transhumanist Conference, half the people there were these people dressed in these black robes, carrying, wizard staffs. And I mean, they were literally looked like they were out of Lord of the Rings. And these were like shamans and wizards and leaders of these mystery schools come out of the dark.
There's really a university called the University of West Bohemia. Is that connected to Bohemian Grove?
I don't know. Probably.
Wow. Are these the same thing as what we used to call the automatons?
Yeah.
Which are like constructs?
Yeah, I mean, if you look back in ancient times, like Hero of Alexandria, and wrote manuals on the idea of creating these god images out of automated devices using steam and sand. And, Hero was an ancient inventor that was able to supposedly animate mechanical birds that could sing, and rotating statues and puppet theaters that were completely automated. In ancient Japan, that were all kind of robotic automatons and things that were invented. So people have been making devices.
That's like the I don't know if you remember the show Jason the Argonaut.
Sure.
They just redid it, and he had the owl that was a mechanical owl. That
it was my favorite character.
Pet, and he could fly around and stuff.
Yeah, and the second one, he wasn't even in there. He picked it up for 1 second and threw it down. I was like,
I know. I said this
rude.
stupid thing, and then you thought it was the best part of the first movie.
I know. I was like, he's gonna be in the movie, and then he just left it there. It was like, well, really?
But that was actually part of the mythology of them,
totally.
and the folklore that they actually could create, mechanical devices which were animated.
Well, and what's interesting, a lot of these mechanical devices were created to the religious temples of the pagan times. And so they would have these elaborate rituals where doors would open by themselves and smoke would come out, or things would rise from underneath the ground or whatever, that were actual mechanical driven devices, but actually presented as something that's supernatural or spiritually driven. So, if you look, and they've actually discovered some of these temples and discovered some of these underground areas where the mechanics were actually working to make these doors open or these things move around.
Yeah.
So, we also know that, the animated statues played an important part. And this practice sort of resurfaced in the Middle Ages. Pope Sylvester II, he was big into consulting, a mechanical talking head, which he consulted actually as a device of, I don't know, was a divination type thing or what, but the same was said of Roger Bacon. And then also a Dominican friar and natural philosopher named Albertus Magnus, who was deep into this same type of consulting mechanical devices as a way of divination. So, and the kings and queens of ancient times have always been fascinated. We're talking about of puppets and animated things, and some of these ancient people actually viewed these animated things of having demonic forces or having spiritual forces put into them. So there are actual magical magnets basically used to attract these energies to perform these sort of physical manifestations. So a lot of these ancient philosophers were actually drawing down what they called as the God force, which they claimed resided in the stars and somehow could give life to inanimate objects if they could figure this information out. And this kind of was what the Golem was about, is this idea that they had to get this secret information or these secret words or secret magic names and might write these words on a piece of paper that would, and then put that into the Golem to allow it to come alive. But there was actually a Swiss alchemist, Paraculus, and he lived in the 1490s to the 1500s, and he was recognized as one of the early masters of supposedly creating golems. And so he had this idea, and this is totally different. I guess going back to all these different people that have created these things in different ways. But he basically explained he says that, and I'll read here, and this is his recipe for creating a homunculus or a golem. If the sperma enclosed in a hermetically sealed glass is buried in horse manure for 40 days and properly magnetized, it begins to live and move. After such time, it bears a form and resemblance of a human being, but it will be transparent and without a body. If it is now artificially fed with the Arcanum Sigenus hominis until about 40 weeks old, and if allowed to remain during that time in horse manure in a continually equal temperature, it will grow into a human child with all of its members developed like any other child, such as been born by a woman, only it will be much smaller. We call such a being a homunculus, and it may be raised and educated like any other child until it grows and obtains reason and intellect and is able to take care of itself. And so they have this idea of creating this, being out
of horse manure.
Out of horse manure, and it sounds like sperm, which goes back to the magical practices of a lot of these people in trying to create these things because they think those are the things that give life, so they somehow must be able to create life. And it just shows how the demonic realm has been able to infiltrate these people since ancient times and actually bring these things out.
Well, it kind of reminds me of Janus and Jambres. They're talked about in the New Testament that these were the two magicians that were kind of in opposition to Moses when Moses saw the Pharaoh and kind of threw his staff down and became a dragon. That they were able to do the same thing. They were actually able to reproduce a lot of the things that Moses did. They turned the sea into the blood. They did many of the same things, so they were actually able to reproduce some of these things at that time, and we knew that their names were Janus and Jambres. And I also, when you were talking about the golem, and the Native Americans have an interesting story about what's called the Manitou, which is a spirit that lives in rocks and different things, and when they're in the sweat lodge, it will actually manifest and the steam of the sweat lodge and become animate. And so, the Manitoba is actually named after the Manitou.
Man.
And there's a whole story about,
Wow.
I think there's even an old movie from 1970s about the Manitou, and
wow.
And then it's this evil spirit. So it seems to be all connected. Even the Indian tribes, had information about this ancient knowledge of strange, spirit beings coming to life, basically.
Yeah. No, that's what's so amazing is it is in every culture. It seems to be some version of the golem seems to be there. And oftentimes it is connected to blood rituals and things to that effect. And it's kind of interesting, how deep this goes. I saw something really creepy looking into the Jewish mysticism and the Cabala, that there's a growing practice to today, and especially in the Jewish Cabala in New York and in some of these places, where they have an actual practice of circumcision. And it's a growing trend of rabbis that are into the Kabbalah, where once they circumcise the baby, they actually directly suck the blood from the circumcised baby.
From the genitals?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
This is an ancient tradition they've practiced within the Kabbalic rituals since ancient times. And to me, if you know about why Satanists claim that they supposedly sacrifice babies or whatever is all totally because they want the blood of a child, and also they want the charged blood of a child. A lot of times they will invoke pain and suffering upon people they ritually sacrifice, because the charged blood of a child or charged blood of a person releases supposed endorphins in the blood that give them their magical powers or whatever. But that was just one thing I came across that just really was disturbing.
Oh, wow. Now, I've heard a couple, like you said, disturbing reports from different people that say that abortion clinics are just huge occultic type things because it's the blood of the infants, and they're taking the blood of the infants and they're taking the fetuses and they're actually practicing occultic type practices with these things to prolong their own lives, because they somehow believe that drinking the blood of infants and performing just absolutely diabolical things on these fetuses will somehow prolong their lives and make them immortal. And it's just, again, the lies of Satan, to destroy mankind. It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah. No, I think it's all connected. I mean, and I mean, I don't think it's absurd for us to think that this is going into deeper places like CERN or that Large Hadron Collider, where, if they were doing this at NASA and Jack Parsons was, dancing around doing occultic rituals while they were doing, blowing up bombs or whatever. I mean, you look at the Large Hadron Collider in front of their building there. They have a large statue of Lord Shiva, which is basically the god of the Hindu god of destruction, and also known as the destroyer.
And doesn't she have a circle around her?
Yeah, she has a circle of flames,
just like CERN is.
And she's standing on a dwarf that she's supposedly the old age, bringing in the new age, which is exactly like all these occultists and New Agers believe of. The age of Pisces, the Jesus god, needs to move into the water bearer, or the age of Aquarius, and that's what that we're moving toward through the whole procession of the equinox. So, but that's what I think a lot of these people within CERN, and maybe some know it, some don't. I mean, maybe a lot of it is, like I said, just guided and directed by the demonic realm without people necessarily noting that they're being guided. it's hard to say. I think it's a lot of both, but I think it's something much deeper and darker going on there. I mean, if you look at what they do at CERN, and who knows where they got this information from? How much is of information in building this machine was channeled information, similar to how Hitler channeled his information to building technology. You know, maybe this is a machine that through intent they opened some sort of, you know, ritual porthole or something to that effect. You know, these.
Yeah.
You know, these are the understandings of the most higher up people building the Tower of Babel. That's exactly what they're doing, just like Nimrod, basically building the Tower of Babel.
Oh yeah.
And that's exactly what heading toward.
You've talked a bunch about intent, and this kind of reminds me of Oprah Winfrey and where they and there's even some Christian books out there, supposed Christian books out there, that talk about if you believe it, you can manifest it.
The secret.
You have to think it. Yeah, the secret.
Yeah.
You know,
that's the law of attraction that I was talking about earlier. Yeah, they're teaching that in a lot of churches today. Many people don't know that Esther Hicks, who is the writer of The Secret, channeled that information through her spirit guide, who she calls Abraham. So once again, we go back to channeled information. And Oprah has willingly embraced this, you know, along with the teachings of Eckhart Tolle, wrote his book, New Earth. And he was near suicide at the time that he came up with this information. He was in a park, ready to commit suicide, and he was giving up on the world. And then he said he was sitting in the park and he just gave up and stopped resisting, he said. Wow. And then he started hearing this voice come to him in his head say, resist nothing, resist nothing, resist nothing. And then that this great light of love overcame him, and he was basically downloaded all this information. So, you know, it's just the same thing time and time and time again, to the point where it just gets absurd. And the fact that people don't recognize it is even more supernatural, because it's not like it's hidden. It's just a matter of gathering the information and presenting it. And it's for everyone to see. You just have to dig back to the origins of all these things. And the origins all seem to interconnect back to the same roots of the Garden of Eden and the original sin. Far enough.
You know what? It also reminds me of 1 Timothy, where it says that a lot of people abandon their faith and they'll follow the deceiving spirits and the doctrines of demons. And the Message, there's a Bible called The Message, which some preachers are actually using to preach on Sundays, and yet this message was channeled the same way that you're talking about all these other things. All this other information was given to these other people. And you know, Satan is infiltrating the church with these doctrines of demons, and people are actually buying this Bible and reading it when it's you know, the guy even admits, he goes, hey, this isn't the Bible. I just you know, he claims that he just sat down and things just came to him. He just wrote it down, whatever came to his mind. And it's just incredible that so many things are being adopted by the church today, which are absolutely demonic in nature. Yeah, no, it is. I mean, and it comes from every different angle, and it comes from the Christian church, who are great believers in every denomination. It's been able to infiltrate, and it's, you know, this idea of Christ consciousness, the Aquarian gospel. These are things written back in the 60s and 70s. It's been around for a while. There's a guy named Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. He's a really well-known French philosopher and Jesuit priest, and a lot of the New Agers are big into him. But he conceived his idea, what he called the Omega Point, which is basically exactly like the idea of this singularity. And he was
he was deep into Eastern philosophies, traveled throughout China and all these Eastern schools of belief. And so I think he basically tried to merge all of these Eastern philosophies into Christianity and believed in this idea that all of life was evolving to a higher complex consciousness, and that the universe itself was evolving into this oneness. And there was even an older guy before him, a guy, Vladimir Vernadsky, who had the concept of the noosphere, which is very similar to that. So this philosophy has been progressing for a long time, that we're getting to this higher form of consciousness, this God consciousness, and the church has just embraced it, wholeheartedly in some instances, because they're not aware of the occult realm and how it manifests and how it disguises itself. It's, it sounds so appealing, and it sounds so interesting, and it sounds so new, and people just dig into it. And the name it and claim it type of prosperity gospel is exactly this: speaking things into existence. This is magic. That's that's if you look up the definition of magic, that's what it is. It's speaking things into existence through your intent of belief. So, and that's exactly what the law of attraction basically says.
Even quantum physics actually gives credence to that philosophy, that the act of observing particles influences the behavior of those particles. And that's been proven, which is absolutely amazing, because it's completely opposite of most scientific studies that say that laws are always in effect and they react the same way. If you do an experiment one way in one type of manner, it's always going to be the case in every type of situation. But the actual act of a human observing something affects it, which is absolutely mind-boggling, which kind of has caused some people to believe that we are actually living in a digital simulation, much like the Matrix.
Totally.
And that we're not living in the reality. And that's basically what the Bible says. The real reality is the spirit world. We're living in the Matrix. We are not living in the real reality.
Yeah, and that's absolutely true. We are, in a sense. I mean, we know for a fact that there's the spiritual realm is what we're really fighting against. Ephesians 6:12, we battle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities. And that's exactly what it is. We're battling against what is unseen, yet it's right here, but we can't see it. So that proves that this is, in a way, a simulation. We are seeing the simulation that we can see right now of what we're able to take in through our, limited meat bodies, so to speak. So,
I think Chuck Missler had a really good way of talking about this information. He talked about a CD or a disc of holding information, and he said, okay, let's say you've got a CD that holds, 4 gigabytes of information. How much does that weigh? How much does it physically weigh?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it might weigh, 2 grams. Well, when you load it with all this software, all this information, load it with the Bible and everything else, how much does it weigh? The exact same.
Yeah.
It still weighs 4 grams, yet all this information that is on that CD, that is digitally placed on there, has no mass, and yet it's the reality.
Yeah, exactly.
And so what is the reality for us? Is it the mass? Is it the CD? Is it our bodies? Or is it the information that's contained in our body or on that CD?
Yeah.
And, the real us really isn't our body. It's our soul and our spirit. That's the reality. And, and that's why things are so strange, and some of these things work that we shouldn't see, that shouldn't seem to work. With all these occultic things, there are some crazy things that are able to manifest in our world that really shouldn't be able to if this was just a physical reality with nothing else, no supernatural element to it. But
Yeah.
I think the quantum physicists are actually proving that there is a supernatural aspect to our reality.
Yeah. Yeah, there's not really any denying it, I don't think, anymore. This idea of the multiverse, and that every reality is happening at once, all at the same time, that's really kind of the only way that they can explain what's happening, where things change whether they're being observed or not. But I think, I think there's a lot of truth to that, and whether we recognize it or not, it's still there. And it seems like we're just getting to the point where these things are being externalized en masse now.
Oh yeah,
and that's where it's a lot different compared to what it used to be. Like I was saying, the kids and other people are being exposed to all this stuff. So we're in a different place now, where we're now being forced on a larger level. It's not like kids back in the 1800s or 1950s were being exposed to all these occult type things on a daily basis like kids are today. And we know that these things have influence, and they have, especially when somebody's not guarded by the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Who's to say how much of the things that are happening right now are directly related to some of these incantations and some of these magical practices that just, people don't believe are real or don't realize are happening right in front of us. So,
yeah. Now, Isaac Newton talked about 2060 being the end of the world. But some of these occultic people, from what I understand, are predicting another event that happens in 2045.
Yeah, that's the Singularity.
Yeah, what do they think is going to happen in this 2045?
So they've got it all laid out. I mean, basically they've got a timeline laid out, and the Singularity is the omega point, or the ultimate point where everyone merges into all consciousness, and it's the idea of no secrets. So one of the things that they believe, I think, is held back mankind from having peace on earth is the idea of secrecy and conspiracy, that people conspire behind closed doors to, do things for their own means. And because of that, no one can ever have peace. And if we could all just know each other's secrets, then there'd be peace on earth. And so they're trying to basically... Google. Well, I think that's what it's all about. It's a slow thing, and they've even admitted we don't want to scare people, so we want to slowly take your rights away. They're going to take everything that's real away and turn it into digital stuff. They're going to turn it into non-mass, non-matter, to where you're kind of going to be forced into that atmosphere, or into that equation, evolve or die, just like Oprah believes.
Yeah. We talked about this earlier, about marketing techniques of today, that, we're in, there's Web 2.0 technology, which is like Facebook, where people get to basically create the website, but with their own content. But Web 3.0 is where the internet kind of learns and discovers about the users. And what you're seeing today, whether or not you know it or not, if you're doing some research on a certain topic with an intent maybe to buy something, you're doing research to try to find the best price, what they're doing now is that they're actually artificially inflating the prices. Because let's say you're looking up a greenhouse and you want to buy a greenhouse. Well, you're going to start finding ads from these different companies that are artificially high, because you're searching for that. Because what do? When you do an internet search, you're trying to find the best price. And so if the best price is $2,000, which is like 20% higher than what they would normally sell it for, you're going to buy it for $2,000, and they're going to make more money. And so that's what they're doing today, is they're using your search results to change their prices so you'll pay more. Because you're not getting the $1,200 price, which is what they'd sell if you just called them up and asked them, hey, what would you sell this greenhouse for? And so it's actually incredible what's really happening. So you almost have to not search for something to find the best price, or go to a different web page, a different computer.
Well, that kind of reminds me of how the art world works. In the art world, if you want to have a paint, you think, why is this painting worth, $500,000 and this painting worth, $200? And it's like the way they're able to do that is they'll actually just donate a piece of art. So a painter just make a painting that's an abstract, crazy piece of art, and they'll donate it to like a big art gallery or museum, and they'll say, I would like to donate my $500,000 painting for you. And they'll donate them all around, and they'll put these prices on them of these outrageous amounts, and then they'll be in the thing. They'll say, "Oh, we got this donated piece of art. It's worth this amount." And then other people who have that outrageous amount of money are like, "I want one of those. Where can I get a $500,000 paint?" And they'll go pay that amount because they're just buy into that, lie that's how much it's worth. And that's literally how the art world works, and that's how they come up with prices on paintings a lot of times, by just lying, just making it up.
Yeah, it is. It's just crazy, but that's realistically what is happening on your search engines. If you search for something, they're going to artificially inflate the prices to get you to buy it, even though that's not their lowest price. And that's why Google is able to spend billions of dollars to buy these obscure companies, because they're able to basically do these different type of marketing scams. And we as consumers and people, we really need to think differently to understand, when you search for this, what is really happening, what's happening. So you almost have to think outside the box to be able to figure out how you're going to get your best price on things if you're actually going to buy things online.
Yeah, no, I mean, that takes me right into, where you talk about Google, it takes me right into the leader of the transhumanist movement, who is an inventor and futurist Ray Kurzweil. I mean, he's pretty much the spokesman of the transhumanist movement, and he works for Google. And he's been writing about transhumanism and about these ideas since, the 50s and 60s. And he has several books that he's put out. And so he describes his law of accelerating returns, which predicts an exponential increase in technologies like computers and genetics and nanotechnology, and how this will all lead into this technological singularity in 2045. So, and he actually lays all this stuff out, and he has predicted all kinds of things. He predicted the internet. He predicted way back when, all these things that actually did come true. So he's one of the leaders within Google, and he's the one pushing for the entire idea of the singularity, along with a lot of other people like Russian billionaire Dmitry Ichkov and others. But he's the one that's actually laid out these ideas of the 2045 initiative and moving it up towards.
Oh wow! He's the guy that made Dragon Speech and some different things, and the Kurzweil digital piano and different things like that. I think he's the guy that did a lot of those things with helping people that were deaf or blind to be able to use the internet.
Yeah,
if I remember right. So he's actually done some good things. But he's big into the occult as well.
Well, the rise of transhumanism is based out of helping people. So it's based out of helping the blind see, the lame walk, the deaf hear. Once again, mimicking Christ, mimicking the
So it's like the best people, the BPOA or the Elks Lodge or the Masons or the Shriners, the Shriners Hospital. So they're all there for helping, but in reality they're cultic type organizations.
Yeah, and not to say that all these people, I wouldn't say even most of them have any clue what's going on. A lot of Masons and Shriners are good people, but I'm sure we're just people of influence within their community, either doctors, lawyers, firemen, different people that are just basically I want to be in the good old boys club, but
Yeah.
good old boys club gathers information and uses this as a way of
Oh yeah, they do good things, but at the upper end of this, there's some kind of diabolical things. Like the Masons here in Oregon. They've got one of the biggest caves in Oregon, near Burns, Oregon, called the Mahir Caves, has bleachers in it where the Masons go in,
Yeah,
and they've got a Mason symbol carved on top of the rock, and this is an ancient cave used by Indians, where they go in and they do ceremonies in there once a year inside this cave, and you're going, why would they do that? Why would they do these crazy things? But there's something going on in these organizations that is a little bit strange, that a lot of the people that are into it really don't quite understand.
Yeah. No, I think we're just actually getting started. I got this whole thing to go over with the whole 2045 initiative and the timeline that I want to kind of go over, and I think we're going kind of long here. We may have to split this up into 2 podcasts because I've got...
Yeah, maybe we could talk about that next time.
Yeah.
So I'm really interested in hearing more about this on what their plan is for the future, because it sounds like they're being influenced, at least the upper echelon of these groups, to do something to basically usher in something for Satan, But
yeah, there's quite a bit to go back, continue to go over, and so maybe we can split that up for next time. But I know, we got started here. We got stuff to go into as far as like the whole DNA manipulation, how aliens tie into this more, how the idea of albinos, and I know we brought that up a few times, but we haven't really dug deep into all the findings there as well.
That'll be interesting to hear.
But yeah, let's save that for the next one. I know we've gone quite a while here and talked about some interesting things tonight. So
yeah, that'll be fun to dig into that next time. So
Yep. Give us some more information to chew on till next time. So yeah, thanks for talking tonight. You got anything else you want to talk about, or?
No, hey, thanks for listening, and appreciate you guys listening. This is our 4th podcast, and we've done things on giants and dinosaurs and dragons and the giant plant life of the pre-flood world, and now we're getting into the end time scenario and how all those things connect. So anyway, really interesting information. So I'm glad we were able to talk about this today.
Yep. And there's a lot of stuff in between that we still got to go over too. So we'll continue to bring in these podcasts, and we're getting a lot of great feedback. We appreciate you guys listening, and until next time, I think we're going to close out here with another song that I think perfectly fits for what we've been talking about tonight, and also utilizes Oprah's voice and Eckhart Tolle. Here is Destiny Lab, our song called Evolve or Die. Good night, everybody.
Nice. Good night.
Eckhart, you talk about in an ever-changing world, a species needs to either adapt or they will die out. And then you go on to say, and I quote, that humanity is now faced with a stark choice: evolve or die.
There's so much to say in so little time. This is a song for those left behind, an insider's view to what's going on. If Christians are raptured away and are gone, in case of emergency, take this CD and make many copies to give away free. But first get a Bible and start reading now. The moment will come when they will not allow distribution, possession of anything Christian. You'll go underground, a secret resistance, and face persecution, imprisoned and beaten. Now is the time to make your decision, to battle his minions left on this earth, or fall for a false explanation. Prefer to be herded like sheep. The ancient delusion, the oldest of schemes, has come to conclusion. The mark of the beast from the father of lies, the angel of light, master of disguise. He's devising a plan, preparing us now, and through evolution convincing the crowds that aliens somehow are out there and bound to have all of the answers, empowered to know the solution, like indigo children, smarter than humans. mission.
Evolve or die refers to whether humanity survives as a species. There is an enormous awakening happening on the planet.
The age of Aquarius, ending duality. Oprah the Secret and Eckhart Tolle preach what will bring in a new age reality based in traditions of pagan theosophy. Bound to be thousands of offshoots of Crowley, students of Alice C. Bailey who follow the lies of Helena Blavatsky, radically altering, changing the pages of history, laying the groundwork forged by the tools of Lucifer, paving the way for the United Nations. A slow preparation, patiently waiting since the creation. The Garden of Eden, a planet whose placement in time is persuaded by aliens, outside invasions, abductions, and cow mutilations, creating an atmosphere ripe for the picking with movies and Hollywood implanting trickery, mastery over the masses. The whole world collapses in panic, all desperate for someone to save them. Obey anyone that will answer the questions. The savior of sorts, a new age messiah. The wolf in sheep's clothing is what will transpire. The mayhem is out of control at this moment. A world full of chaos, confusion, and torment. I'm telling you, don't stop at anything. You can't afford to face life without Christ as your king. The moment might come when the songs are reality, trapped in a world where it's actually happening.
That's one of my favorite quotes that a significant portion of the Earth's population will soon recognize, if they haven't already done so, that humanity is now faced with a stark choice: evolve or die.